What I'm trying to do, is thinking about the reef as a public square, right? Where you actually install a public artwork for the community, and this community can do whatever they want with it. They just hang out, they survive, they eat each other, they make love, they chit-chat, they talk. It's like having a coffee in Sicily, on a Tuesday afternoon, I guess. I grew up in Tuscany, Massa Carrara, in between Florence and Genoa, let's say, in the coast. Everybody in my family made music, so it was kind of the path. It was either science or music, and then I went for music. It was the easier choice somehow. But then, as you can see through my work, science came along, step by step, and slowly came back into my life. I studied actually drums at the Academy of Jazz in Siena. And then, years later, when I started to tour as a musician and so on, I arrived in Berlin, and then all the creative ecosystem somehow was a bomb that exploded under my feet, and I started to challenge my creativity in a different way. And I slowly moved from music, let's say, more into sound art, and then media art, and then environmental and data sonification, and now acoustic ecology.
Maybe I'm going to play you something now. And
Go for it.
Just some seconds, and you can tell us then how you came to make this kind of sound and what time that was.
Let's go. It's one of the best tracks in the record. Never Talk Again.
Yeah.
Sounds good also in the small speaker, actually. It was very well mixed and mastered. A lot of blood and sweat, actually, from my body for this record.
When she's coming back, dogs run out in the rain. She'll wear her yellow hat.
It's very important, the record, because until then I was making music, making art, still undecided. It was confusing for me, it was confusing for everyone, mainly for my future, okay, what am I gonna do here? I felt that I was at the point where I had to choose, right? And the record was very important because it gave me the freedom to go wherever I wanted. And this record was the one that actually gave me the power, right? And the will to say, okay, I'm done with music, I did what I had to do, I finished it, I finished the record, I released it, and I'm done with it. And in fact, I finished the record, I play at the release party in a platoon, full house, amazing night, and then I quit.
Why did you quit?
Because I didn't have anything to say anymore. This was all like a give, It took like so many years to put this whole thing together. And I had so much more to say with art. I felt it, you know. I felt it that something bigger and new was coming through, you know. And from the experience, like I have always been learning and looking around me and like seeing the people that got stuck, right? And the ones that made the step, like that they were able to go forward to find out who they are for real, you know, like, or not for real, but they find out who they are next, who is the next you, right? And not being stuck on some kind of dream or epoca, right? That you have, or relationship that you have with music, because you grew up in a family that makes music, you know, so in a way, you know, you feel obliged all your life to make it. So it was a real cut, right?
And what is the song about?
Never Talk Again. It's about a beautiful woman that was in my life, and well, as the song say, we do not talk anymore. I guess it's very clear from it. But this relationship really gave me a lot, and the song is just a dream, I guess, if I can remember. It's just a dream of the two of us on a rainy night, right? I don't even think that if it happens or not that night, but I had these memories, or want to be memories with her, you know, like, I don't remember if it was really something that we lived or if it's something that I wanted to live with her. Mm-hmm. But it's a beautiful dream. Very dramatic though.
And was there some relation already in your earlier work to what you're doing now, would you say, except that it was music, like interests in topics that you're dealing with now in nature or shamanism or something like that? Was that at all in your use or not?
It was, I mean, I've always been inspired by nature. I grew up, you know, next to the riverside. So even if it was very polluted, because these were the years where there was no regulation on the marble of Carrara, you know, like this majestic place that have been ruining our mountains now for, like, you know, centuries. And what they did, they basically cut the stones and then just throw all the rest into the rivers. So the rivers were white. I grew up on white rivers when I was a kid. We had like some of it was one of the most industrialized areas in the region, right? We had like the highest cancer mortality for years, you know, because the industry were all there. So pollution has always been part of my ecosystem somehow around me, right? There was Montedison and like all these massive heavy industries where the population, the city was basically working on these industries, right? And I remember one time that the neighbors came at our door like at night. We need to run, we need to run, we need to run. And one of these industries exploded. And there was this black cloud above us. It was really epic, like it was really crazy. Like, and the whole city was evacuated. Like everybody went away. And we all ran into the mountains, and from the mountain you could see like this black cloud above the city, like just floating there for days. It was crazy. And then my family took us into the next town in Pisa. I guess you know it because of the tower, right?
Yeah.
So we went to friends and family and we stayed there for weeks actually. So pollution, you know, like has been part of my my creative path, but mainly from a very young hood actually has been part of my life in my skin. So, and this was my first real robotic thing. It sounds good in speakers actually. There's the overtones of the So these are like urban metal objects, right? So the everyday objects that we don't see or we don't care about it anymore, but which are very important for us, right? Traffic light and, you know, stop signs that indicate us the way, right? That we are connected to it visually, but never like in an acoustic matter, right? How do they sound, these objects in urban space? And how do they untangle with the actual soundscape of the city, right? It started with the idea of making visible the invisible wave that surrounds us, but they are actually helping us to communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. So like the so-said electromagnetic pollution. So all the waves created by, you know, mobile phone and Wi-Fi networks and GPS and radars, whatever, you know. I wanted to make the waves visible and audible, you know, in a urban context. I bought actually a machine that is used to measure these type of frequencies. The waves are then translated into bass frequencies. The bass frequencies generate the movement of the loudspeaker, and the woodpecker head is actually the loudspeaker that is, you know, is creating this push and pull movement, which are similar to drumming patterns, right? And this the beak of the woodpecker is actually hitting the metal parts in the urban landscape and translating the invisible waves into drumming patterns. So I was inspired by the woodpeckers because they use sound to communicate with each other, right? Mainly, I mean, to mark territories, but they communicate with sound, right? They found hollow trees and then they bang on those trees and then, you know, they communicate and they mark their territories. And so the connection was to me like, okay, we use these waves to communicate, and the idea started to develop the idea of creating, you know, nature-inspired robotics, which are, you know, more digital twins, right? And they are inspired by the biology and the functionality of specific species in nature, using technology to create a sort of fairy tale slash robotic animal that is able to bring certain critical topics to the audience in a more tangible, progressive and poetical way, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, it was the electrosmog and electromagnetic pollution, and then I moved into more environmental challenges, actually, with the next works.
Okay, I have another one.
Yeah.
This one is not from you, but I think you used it, so maybe you recognize it.
Let's see. Yeah. Such an amazing piece, right? Very beautiful. It was is the central piece of Fungi, the artwork I made before called Sonic Resilience. And this song is sung by the Aka people, and it's called Women Gathering Mushrooms because in fact it's sung by the women of the Aka people that are going in the forest looking for mushrooms, right? I find out about it in the book of Marilyn Sheldrake, Entangled Lives, where he compares this song, right, to the movement of IFI, right? The IFI are the top of mycorrhizal networks, right? And every one of these women is in the forest making one note, right? So they are singing one note, and alone they are just one single note, right? So it's like an individual, right? But together they create these amazing harmonies, right? These amazing symphonies. And that's the way he compares it to the physicality of a mycorrhizal network, so that the hyphae alone, they're just one hyphae, but together they're a decentralized brain that creates amazing symphonies underground. So I got super inspired by the way that he explained it, right? From an intellectual point of view, but also from a physical point of view, also coming from music. It's so simple and so true, right? To compare nature in this way to vocals and polyphony, let's put it that way. And so what I did for the artwork, I basically took the sample, and then we created an algorithm that functioned in its own way as a decentralized system, so metaphorically, of course, but it sort of created a metaphorical digital twin of a mycorrhizal network, right? So the algorithm is basically reading data from soil, abundance of species and pH. What it does is basically then recalculating all this data in real time, and then the sample, which is entangled within the algorithm, is modulating the sample, creating evolving soundscapes within the artwork, right? And it works really well in nature. So when the artwork is installed outside, it runs on 8 different channels. So you hear the different voices coming out of the different speakers, right? And I do not compare it to the original. I don't want to even compare it to, but it somehow gives you this feeling,
I have another one for you. It's also not from you, but I think you might recognize it.
Okay, let's see.
Tamakaya kaya damya kepensobano sinan kepensobano kepensoyon tana damya dadomayona.
I mean, I can guess, no? It's probably a curandero from South America, probably Peru. Singing Icaros, probably.
Mishinam ponte mia ponte sobano akonjama akinda yodaya be ponte ai yodaya be ponte ai yodaya be ponte.
I was not in a good moment of my life, and I started to go to all these sound bath ceremonies in Berlin and so on. And then at one of the ceremonies I met Filippo, a guy that we used to go to Werk together years before. And he looked at me and he was like, "Man, you're not doing well. You really look like shit, actually. You should try the medicina." And I was like, "Do you think so?" And he was like, yeah, you have to. And then he gave me a contact in Peru, and it was a bit tricky to find this person somehow. This was, I think, on Thursday night, and I bought a ticket on Saturday morning. So I went, and it was, I arrived on Christmas Day, so Lima was deserted. There was no one there. And I had this address with this, weird name to go to this weird village, and ask for this other guy that would take you to another place. And on the way it became so complicated, that I called another artist friend of mine. And I was like, I need to go to your guy, because I'm in Peru, I'm lost, and I need to find, a way into the jungle. But this contact that they gave me, I don't think it's working out. So she put me in touch. She gave me the phone number of this person, Percy. And I went to Iquitos, and then somebody picked me up. They took me to Aguardiente, and then for 3 hours walk in the rainforest, and we arrived at this place. And then I stayed there for a couple of weeks, actually, doing ceremonies and it was quite intense. Yeah, you do 3 ceremonies a week, and then you have Saturday, Sunday off to to recover, you know, being in the river and chill, and then you start again. And it was, it was a real experience that also made me understand somehow my relationship to shamanism much more, no? Because all the experiences I made when I was there, they brought me back to realize like why I like shamanism, or why I like is not really the right thing to say. Why am I connected to it, right? And many of these memories came back because my mom was really taking me to shamans when I was a kid, right? On the mountains of Italy, like where I come from, there was a lot of these women that would read you, you know, the future, or they would read you things that are not good with you. They call it malocchio. You know? Something is wrong in your life, you go to this person, and you know, like they try to figure it out, who is responsible for it and how to make it better. And these were like sessions, you know, infinite sessions that my mom would take me to, like every week, or you know, twice a week. You know, bring me the pillow where you sleep, or the pillow where he grew up, you know, like. And then she would go to this other shaman person. I don't know why she would bring me there. I was really a kid, you know, like. And then there was all these crazy things happening there. So I'm very much connected to it. There is
what was happening there?
Love and hate, a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of love and hate, you know. So I'm really afraid of it because, you know, probably all this fear of when I was a kid. But on the other hand, I'm attracted to it, and I'm a little bit addicted to it, you know. So it makes me feel very good, but it also scares the shit out of me, you know. When it makes you feel good, you really go with it, and you really fly away with it. But when it scares me, then it really scares me. It really, really scares me. Like that, you know, it lasts for weeks that I'm scared. And you are scared at any point of your day, at any time. So there is a certain power there, which is, you know, which is in me, or is like confronting myself into myself, that had to come out at one point on a work. So then I created chorals, the first choral work. So when I started to work with the first artwork about corals, I wanted to create a speculative healing media art work to heal the reefs through sound, metaphorically, of course. I recorded shamans in Peru, in South Korea and Japan. And then together with the TU, with the university in Berlin, Technische Universität, and actually the Bifold, which is the research hub for machine learning and big data, we created these algorithms which are called Techno-shamans, right? And they're algorithms trained on this shamanistic music and rituals. They are thought, you know, to be driven by massive data sets of, you know, biochemistry of the ocean, waves, currents, bleaching alert areas. So data that I collected from NASA, Copernicus, NOAA, that are, you know, data sets from 1985 to yesterday, basically. What the algorithm does is basically picking a spot around the world, and it tells you the condition of the reef almost in real time. Depending on how the condition of the reefs are, there is a techno-shaman that sings a ritual for the coral. So if they are good, you know, they sing a happy ritual. If they are not doing well, they sing a healing ritual. If they are doing really bad and they are bleached, it's more of a dead ritual, so they say goodbye to it. There was a friend of mine, Tsubasa, in Tokyo, that was like, I know you want to meet a shaman. I maybe know someone that can actually take you there, but you need to go tomorrow because there is a big happening this week in the village, you know, and she will come out and she will be able to receive people. And then we went, and it was like a long conversation, and he explained why I was there, right, to save the corals, and she would be one of the main key for that. Then we explained as well the whole techno-shamanism idea, like the algorithms that become like shamans that are impersonating her and whatever. She was laughing a lot about it. I don't know how much she got. When we were done with the sessions, she sang this song, you know, that where she's saying like this 40 years old guy comes to Japan to save the corals, and we're gonna sing all together. What I wanted to do with the artwork, you know, creating speculative healing ritual for corals based on bleaching data sets. So using sound as a, let's say, as a metaphorical healing input for nature, right? Going away from the passive environmental data sets that I used until now, but like doing something for nature, right? And then while I was doing the research for the corals, the coral techno-shamans, I find out that actually scientists were doing in real life what my speculative artwork was trying to do, you know, metaphorically.
So you can think of the coral animal as being a little bit like a jellyfish, really. But it's a jellyfish that spends most of its life upside down, with its tentacles waving about above it. And it has loads of these zooxanthellae, these little plants, inside the body of the animal. And they work together in this symbiotic relationship.
This was Timothy Lamont from Lancaster University.
One of the things that gets me really excited is what a coral reef sounds like. And that's because coral reefs have all sorts of amazing animals living on them. Hear all these weird and wonderful sounds when you swim around on a coral reef. So here's some sound recordings. So up first, this is called an ambon damselfish, and it makes a sound that sounds a bit like this. Here's one called the reef croaker. So this one lives at the bottom of a reef, and it tends to hide away in caves. It's a bit secretive, but you hear it quite a lot, and it makes this sound. And then the clownfish, the nose-striped clownfish, it bangs its teeth together, and it makes this sound. So together, all of those sounds create what we call the coral reef soundscape.
And when you were listening for the first time to a healthy coral reef, what were your impressions?
Well, I thought it was, it sounds very funny, actually, right? The first time you listen to it. And it's more of a, it sounds like a sausage of sound, right? And then when you really learn about the details and about the different species which are actually doing things, right? What we said before, they are reproducing but also gossiping and chit-chatting and whatever. Then you start to understand, that is that kind of fish. You start to connect to it in a much broader way. So you start to listen to it as you would listen to a city, right? As you would listen to a big ecosystem where many different people and species are living together, you know, and they just go by, you know, they're not doing anything special. They are not, you know, building, thinking about progression, you know, or, you know, like technology or anything like that. They just hang out, you know. They just hang out, they survive, they eat each other, they make love, you know, they chit-chat, they talk. It's like having a coffee in Sicily, you know, on a Tuesday afternoon, I guess.
A lot of coral reefs, as you'll have heard, are damaged. And that means that as marine biologists and as marine scientists, we have a challenge to try and understand how to best rebuild these coral reef ecosystems. We asked the question, well, how can you bring fish back to a reef? If the reef's been damaged and all the fish have gone away, then you replant the coral and you grow the coral back, but how can you get the fish to come back? And we thought the answer might lie in these sounds that I was playing before. It turns out that fish are really attracted by the sounds of other fish. So what we did is we thought, well, what if you could play the sounds of a healthy coral reef to attract fish back to an area that you were rebuilding and restoring?
So they record the soundscape of healthy reefs in like multiple locations, and then they play those sounds back into degraded colonies using underwater loudspeakers like the one that we have here, right? So inspired by, by the research of Timothy, then I created a work which is based on his research, but is using sound art as a regenerative idea, right? So we created sculptures out of ceramic and calcium carbonate. We put loudspeakers on top, and then engineers from Berlin, they build a solar power station that floats above the artwork and collects, solar energy and transforms it into electricity, and it powers the underwater sound system, right? When the organisms attracted by the sound are coming back to the reefs, they don't find a desolated ecosystem, like a dead ecosystem, but they find something that they can rebuild their future in, In this case, the ceramic and calcium carbonate sculptures, they're like, the same material of corals, they reflect the natural composition of corals. So, and they are done in a way that they can enter from the top and then live inside, like making eggs. So they are thought to be, a shelter. What I'm trying to do, is thinking about the reef as a public square, right? Where you actually install a public artwork for the community, and this community can do whatever they want with it. And you can see it, like, when they start, they are like this, they are white, right?
Yeah.
So they are completely an incubator or something for nature to deal with. So the fishes and the microorganisms and the shrimps, and the sharks. Sometimes, I saw sharks around there. They come back,
So when we didn't play any sounds and we just left it as a quiet open ocean, we got about 25 fish coming back. But when we played the sounds, we called that acoustic enrichment, and we got twice as many fish coming back to those reefs.
So we had great result on this, but then the temperatures, they rise in the last weeks of the experiment, and some of the corals, they actually died. So in a way, we are making really huge progress on one part of the research, with sound being, a catalyst of ecological resilience, right? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, still, like human activities and whatever we do, it still has a big impact, like rising sea temperatures, they do not forgive, and they're like around the corner all the time. We have been seeing it in the last few years, right? So great results on one side, really sad on the other side, because we cannot do anything about coral bleaching using sound.
Yeah, so the fish are coming, but if the temperature is just rising and rising, then it's...
The corals will still bleach,
Yeah.
What is the hope for the project is then it speeds up so much, the recovery, that then they somehow becomes more resilient to the high temperatures. We should first start, to do what we are not very good at, and shut up and listen for a second. When you actually give a voice to the more than human community, you create an empathic feeling to what's the human communities, to create some sort of relationship, right? That it gets us closer and closer and closer to nature, right? When you start to give voice to all these species, you are actually able to create some sort of common language that humans can create a connection with, right? And so, in an utopian future, from my point of view, sound can actually become a very useful and primary resources to create coexistential empathic strategies between, you know, the more than human community and the human community, because there is no them without us and vice versa. We need to start understanding that we need them